Hey everyone, Britt Albert here. If this is your first time here, I'm a spiritual transformational life coach. It's my goal for this channel to help you overcome the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. Today's video is difficult for me to share, and probably not in the way that you think. This video took some time to process through for me personally, but the biggest part that makes this video more difficult for me to share is because this is something that I have never talked about on this channel. This is not a topic that everybody agrees with. And if this video doesn't resonate with you, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're finding that there is a discomfort or disagreement, I do recommend to go ahead and click off, and it's okay. This video needs to be shared with those who need to hear it. And if you feel that this video resonates with you, you'll know immediately if you're one of those people. So I want to talk about an experience that I had with a past life regression. As you guys know, and as I just said, I'm a spiritual transformational life coach. I work a lot with clients one-on-one, and most of what I do is a coaching atmosphere where we'll have anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours on the phone, and we will talk and I'll coach you through things that you're going through. Well, not everybody knows that I do offer other services, and one of those other services is past life regressions. Past life regressions is something that I have taken myself through a couple times, but it's not something that I usually do on the regular. I honestly thought that it really wasn't something that I needed to do more than once, because most of the time the questions that you're getting are answered within just one past life regression. But there are things that have been shown to me that have come up on their own. And this last time was the most in-depth and the most recommended, I guess you could say, past life regression session for me to take myself through. It came up in so many different ways. So many different synchronicities were telling me that there was something that I needed to heal within myself. And it was like searching for something, searching for a memory I didn't have. And asking myself, well, did I just bury this? Like, how far deep is this thing that I need to heal? I know I need to heal it. I know it's there, but I can't find it. And it kept coming up, and it kept coming up that it was something from a past life that was brought over into this life. Now, I have talked about karma a little bit, but just to kind of make a blanket, super broad blanket statement, I don't believe that there are certain karmic things that we bring over from a past life into this life that we then have to pay for. For example, if I were to hurt somebody in a past life, I don't think that I come here into this life and I receive that same pain as my punishment for what I did in a past life. I think that there are hurts and there are traumas and there are things that weren't healed that you can bring over, and it's another opportunity for you to have that experience that you didn't fully finish. So that's how I kind of view the karma thing. I don't subscribe to the belief that you are punished in this life because you start out this life the same as everybody else as an innocent baby. So it's very difficult to argue for me that standpoint of you did something bad in this life, so now in this life, even though you're pure and you're innocent and you're starting out the same as everybody else, you are more deserving than somebody else of pain and torture and things like that. I just don't see how that serves you or anybody else. So I don't agree with that mindset when it comes to past lives. I'm going to just tell you guys what happened. After months, actually close to a year of being hounded and synchronicities coming up and things telling me and showing me that there's something that I need to go and find in a past life, I finally started to have some real buildup in my solar plexus and my sacral, and it really feeling like sick to my stomach for a couple of months. And last week I went into a meditation and I had a lot of fears that were coming up, and I pretty much just gave all of those fears to God. And I said, I'm going to speak the unspeakable. I'm going to speak all of these fears and just give them to you and lay them all out there. And I did, and it was amazing. And I got some really great revelations and some love, and I needed that. And then I had a second intention, and I put my hands on my solar plexus and my sacral, on my stomach, my lower, and where my intestines are. And in my meditation, as my hands were on my stomach in those places, I said, show me where the memories are that this energy is stored. And it was absolutely clear. And the message that I received was that I needed to record myself doing an entire guided meditation, just like I would do for a client. Then I needed to take myself through that guided meditation. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. I hear you. Thank you for the very clear instructions. I will do that. And so immediately my eyes popped open, which is a little frustrating for me because usually I like to kind of come out of a meditation slowly. But my eyes popped open, and that was that. And okay, so immediately I picked up my phone and I did an entire hour and a half guiding myself through the past life regression session and just recording it on my phone. I didn't have time that day or the next day to go through it because house full of kids and husband, and I would need a good hour and a half by myself to be quiet and be still and not be disturbed. So 2 days later, I had the perfect opportunity. Kids were sleeping in. I got up a little bit early. My husband was at work, and I laid on the bed and I walked myself through this guided meditation. I listened to my guided meditation as I was speaking and walking myself through it. So what happened? I was a little boy, a 10-year-old boy in the Pacific Northwest, right around the time of the gold rush. I'm not exactly sure what the years were, but I asked myself, first I go through a process where I get acclimated to the settings and I try my best to figure out the year and where I am geographically, and am I male, am I female, how old am I, kind of look around for context clues. So after I did that, I asked, can I hear anybody say my name? Am I aware of what my name was? And my name was Alex. So I said, I guided myself to go to the best memory that I had within that lifetime. And you guys have to understand that back then and where we lived, it was my mom and my dad, myself, and my little sister. And I'm not sure how old my little sister was. I'm guessing between the age of 5 or 6, maybe no older than 7 though. And the 4 of us lived in a 1-room small log cabin, and we did not have much money at all. And it was my 10th birthday, and I remember my mom, I was so floored that somehow my mom was able to get the ingredients to make a birthday cake for me. Now, this is not like a birthday cake we would have today. There was no frosting, there were no candles, but it was just this little pastry, and it was such a treat, and it was so amazing for me to be able to have a birthday cake for my 10th birthday. And I can picture the little cabin perfectly. And I remember smelling the smell of the damp wood from being in the Pacific Northwest of the cabin, and the smell of the pastry in our little cabin, and the smell of the wood burning in our little fireplace, and just this warm atmosphere and feeling of my family coming all together and celebrating my birthday. Then in my guided meditation, I had the Alex, put his hands on his solar plexus and his sacral. My body guided me to whatever memory I first stored in those places. Where was the memory that the energy was first stored within those places? Then I went there, but I didn't go there immediately. It was like black. So it's like I was watching a movie through this first part, and I was seeing through Alex's eyes through that first person perspective. And everything was so vivid. I could smell things, I could feel things, I could feel the air, and that's the way I guide myself, so that I'm very immersed in what I'm experiencing. But I also, when I was going to where the memories were stored, that is not something that I need to re-experience. You understand? It can be scary. You would think that, why would you want to experience that kind of trauma again? How terrible would that be? So I have to detach the emotion from the observation, and I have to remind myself or my clients that you are merely an observer. Nothing can touch you, nothing can harm you. You will not feel what is going on. You will just merely observe it like you're watching a movie, and you will be able to remember what you are observing, and it will make sense to you. But there's no emotional attachment to it. You're not going to feel what you were feeling at that time. And even with me telling that to myself, there was still resistance, and it was black. It was just black. But I knew that this was important, and I settled into my body, and I settled into the truth of knowing I am safe. I am safe. It is safe for me to go there. It is safe for me to look at this. It is safe for me to experience this, because it is needed for me to heal. So after that little bit of resistance, then I finally started to, it was like a pinpoint of light, and a picture started to come into focus, and the darkness around the edges began to fade, and then I was in a room. And it was a room I did not recognize, and this room was like as big as my family's little shack was, and there was nice furniture in it. I didn't recognize this place, and it seemed like this, wherever I was, there was a lot more wealth than where I was growing up. And in that moment, I had this realization of what was happening to me. And I'm guessing 3 or 4 months, I'm not exactly positive on the date, after my 10th birthday, I was kidnapped by a man. And this man was raping me. And I wanted to look away. I didn't want to look at this scene, because who would? This is a little boy and a man. And thank God I did not have to view anything from the man's point of view. I did not see anything of that perspective. I felt nothing. There was nothing I felt within my body. I did not feel him touch me. But I did have to look. I tried to leave the body and look at the scene where there's the boy and the man in front of me, but I was not allowed to do that. I was not allowed to look away. I was trying to look at the wall, but that was not allowed. I had to be into the body of the boy and see from his perspective, which thankfully he didn't see much, but was very much aware of what was happening. But again, I felt nothing physically and I felt nothing emotionally, but it was needed to honor that story and to honor what happened. Now, that was the only part that I had to see, that I had to know, that I had to witness, was that first part, because that's what I asked. That's where I asked my body to take me. I said, take me to the memory of the first time this was stored here. So I did not have to see all the other times. I did not have to see all the other people. And I just had this knowledge and I had this understanding that he had me for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And along the process, there were points where he shared me with other men, and he had dragged me all across the West Coast into California, Oregon, and Washington over the span of that 2.5 years. And I don't know exactly what he was doing, but I was his captive. And the reason that I went forward those 2.5 years is because after that experience was done, or not really done, I didn't have to finish watching the whole thing, but after I understood what was happening enough that I could be released from that scene, I then said to take myself to the moment right before my death. And I moved to that place, and it was about 2.5 years later. And I was 13 years old. I had just turned 13. And I believed that I was strong enough to get away. I thought that I was big enough. I thought I was strong enough that I could have got away. And I tried to escape, and the man stabbed me. And he was going for my heart, but he actually stabbed me just under my heart. So it took me longer to die. And I was laying on this floor, this damp, light gray wood floor that looked old even then. And he had me in some other broken down shack wherever we were at that point. And I remember looking to the side as I was laying on the floor, and I was scared. I was scared to die, but it was still better. It was still better than never being able to get away. And the man left, and he just left me to die, and he walked away, and I don't think he ever even went back to that cabin. And I experienced myself coming out of my body and my spirit overlooking the scene. And it's like Alex just did not want to observe his body, and it's like he ran away. So it was just quick, like came out of the body, understood what he was seeing, and left real quickly. And as I was guiding myself through this meditation, I had myself follow into what came next. So I went to a place that was complete blackness, just dark. There was nothingness, but I was still in this form, this body of this 13-year-old Alex. And it's kind of funny because even though there was nothing to sit on, there was no solid ground, I still sat down and I pulled my knees into my chest and I pulled my arms around my knees and I laid my chin on my arms around my knees, and I felt the darkness expand behind me, and my first thought was God. But it was many. It felt like many were in this presence with me, and then I got this energy that felt like my mother, and not my mother as Britta, but Alex's mother. And it was this feminine energy, this comfort, this safety that comes from the feminine. And looking back at it now, I feel like it was the divine feminine side of God coming to Alex, because that was what was needed, a masculine energy with where that spirit was not what was called for in that moment. It was a mothering, a protective, a loving feminine energy that was needed to soothe and comfort in that moment of soul retrieval, if you will. I acknowledged the presence, but I didn't look back at it, and I still had my head on my arms, and I said, why did this happen to me? And the first thing that I was told is so that I could experience forgiveness. And immediately in the moment, the man's face was pictured in my mind, and I thought maybe I was supposed to forgive him. But then they continued, and they said that the other reason for the experience was so that I could know how strong I really was, so that I could be at that point where the normal person would think that they would break psychologically, and I would know how resilient I could be, how much I could sustain and still be me. And they said, it didn't kill you. And I said, yes, it did. I died. And they said, no, the knife killed you. But the experience did not. The act of being murdered had nothing to do with the trauma that I went through and the torture that I experienced over those 2.5 years. I survived that. The knife was just the man cleaning up his mess. The knife had nothing to do with the trauma. That was merely how it ended. And I understood that. And in that moment, it resonated as truth. And I believed that, and I trusted it, and I said, yes, I understand that now. And then I talked myself back into my safe space and how I guide again with the guided meditations, and came back into my body, and then I opened my eyes. And I came back with the remembrance of all that I experienced. Now, remember, when I talk people through difficult things that they're experiencing in a past life, you are still separate. You are still divided from emotion and attachment. So when I came back with the memories, I was still detached. So there was no, this was my past life, that was me, and I experienced it. It was still little Alex, a 10-year-old boy. I witnessed what he went through. Okay? There was still a detach. I had not absorbed that truth as a experience that I went through. So my reaction was of Britta, a mother. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I could not stop crying. And I reached out to my beautiful, wonderful group. I call them my partners in shine. They went to school with me, and we all got certified together as coaches, and we still support each other. And I reached out to these beautiful women, and I said, are you guys free? And one of them was able to respond before the other. And I called her, and her name's Jody Grasso. We've done collabs before. She's an amazing coach as well. And I could not stop crying. And she had to help me with some breathing and just to be able to calm down, to be able to talk about it and what happened. And she was so loving, and she held space for me, and she was not going to make me talk about it, but I asked her. I wanted to talk about it. I needed to talk about it. I said, can I tell you about it? And she said yes. And I told her everything that I just explained to you guys. And the part, I feel very comfortable, and I understand the part where it talked about what I could go through, what I could survive, and how strong I was. And I would never know how strong I was until I was pushed past the point that I ever thought I was possibly able to survive. And the reason that made so much sense for me now is because when I was 18 years old, right when I turned 18, I joined the Army, and I went to basic training. And what is the point of that? It is to help you find muscle failure. There's many points with it, but that's kind of one of the key things, is to break you down physically and show you that muscle failure is not where you think it is. Muscle failure goes way beyond where you thought you could ever physically move your body. If you push your body to the point of muscle failure, you learn how capable, how resilient your body is. You learn how to process pain, how to push through pain, how to block out pain, how to survive, how to move when you feel like you can't move anymore. And as painful as an experience as that was, it was one of the most powerful things that I have ever participated in this lifetime. And because I had that physical experience, it was very easy for me to accept the psychological equivalent that I received in that life. The thing that I struggled with was the forgiveness. And as I explained to Jody, I said, I'm supposed to forgive the man. Of course, would that not be what I'm supposed to do when I came to experience forgiveness? To have an opportunity to experience forgiveness? Would that not be the logical thing, is to forgive my attacker? But Jody pointed out something perfect. She said, no, he did nothing wrong. And that may trigger you, but bear with me. His character, the agreed upon co-creation before coming to that life, played the role he was supposed to play. If I was supposed to experience, and I chose and wanted to participate in an experience to learn the limits that I needed something to allow me to experience that limit, right? I would never be able to experience that limit if somebody did not agree to co-create with me, somebody who had the desire to experience what the other side was like, the controlling side, the hurtful side, all of that. There was somebody who wanted to experience that, and it matched up with what I wanted to experience as far as how much can I survive, and it symbiotically, we were able to assist each other. So he did his part perfectly. Not only that, but if you just take it into the 3D, the lifetime, if you're not thinking about outside of before we came and incarnated, if you're just thinking about him as a man, let's be logical there as well. How would forgiveness have served him? He had no remorse. He had no remorse about what he did to me. He had no remorse about sharing me with other men. He had no remorse about murdering me. None. So how would forgiveness have served him? There was no remorse. He didn't need it. It would have done nothing for him. He wouldn't have even cared. How would it have served me? I died. I wasn't at a point yet and where I was safe to even look back and be able to forgive him. I was trying to escape. Psychologically, there was no opportunity to forgive him. I died. How would that have served me at all? So he was not the one to be forgiven. So then Jody asked, well, who was? And I said, well, maybe my parents. Maybe I was supposed to forgive my parents because they didn't find me. And Jody helped me realize, she was like, well, they were really poor. She's like, they probably did the best they could, but he was pulling you up and down the coast. Like, you were going through all these different states. He obviously had money, he had resources. Cars didn't exist back then, so how would my parents have ever been able to find me? I was just gone. So I knew that there was nothing to forgive there because they couldn't. How could I, again, how would that have served them and how would that have served me? There's nothing to forgive. So then I thought maybe I was supposed to forgive myself, as in Alex, for not trying to escape earlier. And I thought about it and I realized that Alex was very small. Even when Alex was 13 and thought that I was big enough, old enough to try to escape, it was very malnourished. He was not taken care of. He'd been abused for years. He was weak, and that's okay, but there was no escaping earlier. And he always kept me outside of civilization, outside of the towns, in the wilderness, in the forests, in the mountains. So even had I escaped, even if he didn't stab me, I would have had to try to survive and try to figure out how to survive in the wilderness. And there were some skills that I may have picked up from my family before I was captured, but those last 2.5 years, there was no training for me. There was no hunting experiences. There was no building a shelter experiences. There was no learning how to find water experiences or the difference between safe water and unsafe water. I didn't have any of that knowledge. So had I escaped earlier, one of two things would have happened. Either I would have died in the wilderness, or if by some miracle I ended up surviving, it's highly likely I would have become a man who would have then hurt children myself. So is there anything to forgive there? No, there's nothing for me to forgive there. So then well, who am I supposed to forgive? I don't understand this. I did this to experience forgiveness. It didn't make sense to me. And then I don't remember if it was Jody who said it, probably. She's a good coach. Or if it was a realization from me. But then the idea was presented that perhaps it's my higher self that needs to be forgiven. And I do believe it was Jody who said this, because she went further into explaining, and she said, hypothetically, imagine this scenario. Before you incarnated into that life, you were in a room, you're seated at a table with all of these other spirits, and you have long-lasting relationships with them, and maybe there's somebody that I really respect and really honor, really look up to, and they're telling me about this experience that they had with a similar situation. And I am thinking, I would like to experience that too, because I saw the exponential growth that they had in this hypothetical conversation. That they had a similar experience and their growth just exploded. And I was thinking, oh, I would like to have that experience as well. So it's not to say that I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but for lack of better human and English words, we'll say that I didn't know what I was getting myself into, because it's one thing to be in a place of love and wholeness and peace, non-duality, connection to everyone and everything, the universe, God, then to go and forget and experience duality is a completely different thing. You can think you're ready, and I was, obviously I did, because I did it, and it was what it was. And sitting from a place of non-duality, and I could look at that life and I can say, oh, well, I was going to live a short life anyway. It's not like this was going to go on forever. I'm only going to live till I'm 13. It's going to be maybe not a piece of cake, but it won't last very long. So I can do this thing. I can handle it. And so I go not realizing what living that experience is going to feel like and be like. And so it's necessary for me now to experience the forgiveness of my higher self. Can I forgive my divinity for choosing to experience and put us through such a life as that? And Jody said, well, why did it have to be that? Why did it have to be 2.5 years of experiencing that? Why couldn't you have just been raped one time and experienced that trauma? And I knew the moment she said it, I felt it inside of me that if it didn't happen then, it would have happened anyway at a different life, because that experience was needed in order for me to understand how far I could go and how much I could survive psychologically. Having it in that way did mean a short life, did mean a short time. I wouldn't have to experience it for very long. So it worked out, you could say, perfectly. But I still felt angry. I still felt angry at myself, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, for choosing that, for choosing to put me through that to where it's bleeding over now and I'm having to deal with it. And I struggled with forgiveness for a while. Let's be honest here. I've been struggling with forgiveness for years. I have been struggling with forgiveness for well over 20 years. Probably closer to 25. That is something that has not come easily to me in this life. And every time I think I understand what forgiveness is, I realize that's not what it is. And every time I think I've forgiven, then it would come back later and I'd get so frustrated and like, well, I already forgave this. Like, why is it coming back up again? And then I'm like, well, did I really forgive? Or is forgiveness something you have to continue to do over and over again? I didn't know. And forgiveness is something that has evaded me and been very frustrating. And I have the desire to. It's not like I'm trying to be stubborn and not forgive people or myself. I just don't feel like forgiveness is something that I've really been able to grasp and fully understand. And so it's been frustrating. And I've talked with other people and I've meditated on it and I've prayed about it, and this morning I felt like I finally got some guidance on this, at least this specific scenario. And I sat and I asked, show me what forgiveness is. I know that I know what forgiveness is, but help me remember what forgiveness is. And I asked for somebody to come in who had experienced something like I experienced, who could help me feel what it was, identify where it is, because I know it's within me. I know I'm capable, but I couldn't identify where it was, what it was. And the thing that I keep getting is acceptance. But beyond acceptance, it's no longer being the victim. So that means that it's not just no longer wanting vengeance, or it's not even wishing the other person well. And it damn sure is not saying that what they did is okay. It's none of those things. It's understanding that what they did has no control over me, and accepting that I am not a victim to what happened, that it was an opportunity for an experience, and to see it for the truth that it is. What did it bring me? Why did I do it? Why did that person do it? Or whatever it is. In this specific situation, it was forgiving my higher self and understanding that my higher self never intended to hurt me. Never intended for that kind of trauma to be long-lasting. The intention was to experience something that would help me grow. The intention was to help me experience forgiveness. How can I experience forgiveness without having something that needed to be forgiven? So my own higher self gave me an opportunity to find what that was like and to figure out, take everybody else out of the equation, how can I be a victim to myself? It's so easy to be a victim to somebody who I feel is outside of me. That person hurt me. That person said something that was mean to me. That person abused me. Blah, blah, blah. All these people, what they did to me. How do you quantify forgiving yourself? Well, in reality, we do it all the time. We hurt ourselves all the time. We make choices that cause consequences that we have to live with and deal with. And even though we understand that a mistake is an opportunity to grow and learn, and that's how we learn, we still have regrets. We still feel guilt. We still have memories that come up and haunt us about things that we said or did or thought or whatever when we were not self-aware in the moment, times that we embarrassed ourselves. These things come up, so we're constantly hurting ourselves. We're constantly needing to forgive ourselves and free ourselves. And it's understanding that what you do in those moments, or what I did when I made that decision, was based upon the information that I had at the time. Again, for lack of a better word, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I could understand fully, conceptually, but it's something completely different to experience it, and that's the whole point. So can I sit with myself and love myself and understand that it was never about putting myself through hell so I could see how strong I was. And it was never about hurting myself. This is so complex and it runs so deep because there's another part of this story that's relevant to what's going on now. Why would this lifetime come up now? This wasn't even my most recent lifetime. It's not like this was the last time I lived. No, this is like 2 or 3 lifetimes ago. Why is this coming up now? I've mentioned this in several videos. My last one, I mentioned this as well. This is coming up now, and this was part of my anger because of what's happening in the world right now. But guess what? This has been happening for a long time, right? But it's never been revealed like this. It's never been cleared like this. It's never come to the surface. So all of this darkness, all of this child abuse energy, all of this disgusting experiences that are still happening today are coming to the surface and they're being exposed. So a similar experience from lifetimes ago, that is the same vibrational match to what is being exposed today. And that also came up with the same energy because it's all being cleared. That energy is being cleared and it's being released and it's being removed. That is why I am experiencing clearing that now. That is why it called to be healed, so that it could be released. So it's not just now, but it's all of it. All that has ever been is coming up to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be heard, and to be released. I wanted to wait to make this video, and I thought it was going to take much longer because I wanted to get the forgiveness part down. I needed to be able to give you guys that conclusion, to say, I forgave my higher self. And I'm realizing that forgiveness is a lot of different things for each situation as it occurs. But the biggest thing about forgiveness is accepting what happened and not trying to change it and not wishing you could change it and feeling no need to want to change it at all. You're just okay with it. You're accepting of it. You understand that it was, and it's okay that it was. And it just is. And it's not being the victim and not allowing that to tamper with your thoughts or your emotions. There's no psychological or emotional hold on you anymore. That's why forgiveness is so important for yourself. It has nothing to do with what it can give the other person. It's wonderful and it's beautiful when it does, and it offers healing for the other person, but they also have to accept it and forgive themselves too. Forgiveness is only for you. It sets you free. It stops you from poisoning your body. Really does nothing for the other person. Not really. I love you guys. I know this was a longer video, a bit more intense, and I really felt that it needed to be shared. I needed to be more transparent than I'd ever been. And I know that for those who need to hear this message, that this was probably something that's going to rock the foundation of things that you believed or understood. But the resonance of truth is what I want you to really sit with. I love you guys, and I will see you next time.